September 22, 1862, President Abraham Lincoln signed an executive order known as the Emancipation Proclamation, directing all slaves in Union-controlled areas to be freed. That took place during what could be called the most divided moment in U.S. history, the Civil War. That's where a group of states known as the Confederacy fought to maintain the institution of slavery. Because of that divide, the proclamation didn't actually free all slaves. That didn't happen until 1865 after the surrender of Confederate Army leader Robert E. Lee in April of 1865. Historian Paul Stewart with the Underground Railroad Education Center says that Juneteenth is a recognition that the Union won the war.
Well, Juneteenth is the last day that I want to say that people in Texas who had been held enslaved it was the day that they were told about the fact that the war was over and that they were set free. The Civil War was over. And it happened June 19th of 1865, and the war had been over, I think, in April. And to boot, the Emancipation Proclamation had happened a couple of years earlier. So technically they should have been free, but nobody told them.
Over the years, there have been several dates used to celebrate the end of slavery because it ended in different places at different times. In New York, for example, slavery ended in 1827 after a 1799 law allowed slaves to be freed over time. But the end of slavery in Texas signaled the end of slavery for every state in the country. While Juneteenth celebrations have been held for over 150 years, some people may not know about the holiday or what it means. Mary Gooden, the head of the Glens Falls NAACP, says that this is a part of the country's history that should be taught in schools.
I didn't know about Juneteenth when I was in school. It was not taught to us. Actually, I didn't even know it until after I was I was way in my years. I knew nothing about it. We were taught about slavery and, the emancipation of slavery. Martin Luther King, Harriet Tubman, that we all know that. Thankfully, we need to know that. That's part of our history. But the part that wasn't taught was the part that needed to have been a part of the history. July 4th was big in our history, but that isn't all of our history. We need to have known all of our history. It's not fair just to have July 4th.
This year's Juneteenth in New York comes after a law was passed last year making it an official state holiday. Last June, Governor Andrew Cuomo signed an executive order making it a holiday for state workers and signaled his support for a law that would make it a holiday for everyone. His motivation at that time was civil unrest after the death of George Floyd. The state has an annual MLK Day celebration, a holiday that's similar in the theme of civil rights, and Cuomo said at the time he'd be open to the same for Juneteenth.
And I want to be a force for change, and I want to help synergize this moment, whether it's reform on the police department, whether it's an expanded racial understanding and sensitivity and progress. And if Juneteenth is part of that, and a recognition of what happened, and an understanding of what happened, and an acknowledgement of that, great.
That position is one that earned the governor praise from Senator Robert Jackson, a Democrat from Manhattan.
Well, the United States of America is a country that's built on empowerment of the rich. And the bottom line is the United States of America is overall a racist country overall, period. And so for our governor to decide that June 19th was so important for the state of New York, which is very, very important to the people of New York State. But that is not nationwide. June 19th is not celebrated nationwide.
Syracuse area Assembly Democrat Pam Hunter says this is a win.
We need to stand on history and acknowledge where we have come from, where we still are, and obviously where we want to go.
Albany area anti-violence activist Jerome Brown says it's about time.
So it's definitely overdue, and we still got a long way to go.
As for the next steps for the black community as a whole, Mary Gooden says it's public service.
Well, like I said, you know how the difference is going to be is you've got to run for office. That's how the change is going to be.
And while it's not the exact same thing as July 4th, it does hold the same function for many members of the black community. That leads to the question of how do you celebrate Juneteenth? Democratic Brooklyn Senator JABARI BRISPORT says it's about community engagement.
I think you march for future liberation. You know, there are levels of liberation, and we're still fighting against a lot of forms of oppression, so we need to take to the streets.
Paul Stewart says that the best way to celebrate is to educate yourself.
I don't think there's any right way to celebrate it, but I think just as much as, with, the Martin Luther King Day and other concerns that people have, making it not so much a day off as a day on to be aware of the history of the holiday, aware of the whole freedom struggle that has been going on really from the earliest times, and to have occasion with family, and to maybe take in a historic site.
After June 19th of 1865, the 13th Amendment to the Constitution abolishing slavery was ratified later that year. And while the end of slavery was followed by another difficult point in the country's history, Reconstruction and Jim Crow, historians agree that the universal abolition of slavery in the United States was a moment to be celebrated and not one that should be forgotten.